got about a 10-foot break to the right, and all I was concentrating on is just making a good stroke. And I just hit it pure, and it just rolled beautifully and went right in the center of the hole.
Terrific, and of course his short game has been phenomenal.
Well, he's got a great chance of winning because he's so confident, and as Jack says, his short game is dynamic.
Billy Casper is perhaps the most egregiously underrated champion in golf history. He was left out of the conversation. He was relegated to the shadows of the big three. Palmer, Nicklaus, and Player got the fame, while Casper, despite winning more than almost anyone, was treated like a footnote. But on February 7th, 2015, when Billy Casper passed away at the age of 83, something remarkable happened. The very legends who had overshadowed him, his greatest rivals, the men who defined his era, spoke out to correct the historical record. This is the true story of Billy Casper's greatness, not through the lens of marketing, but through the eyes of the 5 legendary players who competed against him and knew his real worth. Before he was a champion, William Casper Jr. was a disciple. Born in San Diego in 1931, he started playing golf at age 5 and was caddying by 11. San Diego was a hotbed for junior golf, with year-round sunshine creating the perfect environment for developing young talent. But his formative moment came at age 15 when he met his idol, Ben Hogan, at his home club. Hogan, the wee Iceman, was the gold standard for precision, mental toughness, and a stoic, all-business demeanor. For young Casper, this encounter wasn't just inspiring, it was defining. It set the course for his entire career. Casper's admiration for Hogan was so profound that it became a conscious choice of self-identity. Casper was naturally a loose, wise guy in his youth, but he actively suppressed that part of his personality on the course. In its place, he cultivated a stoic, on-course persona modeled directly after his idol, a quiet intensity he gained through a form of self-hypnosis. He didn't just want to play like Hogan, he wanted to compete with Hogan's singular focus. Casper turned professional in 1954. Years later, as a young professional on tour, Casper had his first real encounter with the man he emulated. The setting was Colonial in Fort Worth, Hogan's home turf.
Casper was heading out for a practice round as Hogan walked toward the locker room. Their paths crossed. Casper later said he was scared. He wanted to hide, but there was no place to hide. But the encounter wasn't the brusque dismissal he feared. Hogan stopped. He told the young Casper that he was a fan and that he'd been playing some great golf. For Casper, this was the ultimate validation. The apprentice had been recognized by the master. It was a passing of the torch, a signal that the Hogan-esque philosophy was now in his hands. In 1959, Casper delivered the ultimate tribute to his idol. He won the US Open at Winged Foot Golf Club, and he did so in a manner that was pure Hogan doctrine. His victory wasn't a display of power. It was a masterpiece of strategy, patience, and putting. Winged Foot's famously challenging greens were remarkably mastered by Casper. Over 72 holes, he totaled just 114 putts. He had 31 one-putts and only a single 3-putt across all 4 rounds. These numbers are almost incomprehensible at a US Open venue known for punishing greens, but the true Hogan move of the tournament came on the long and difficult par 3 third hole, high-risk, low-reward shot. Casper, channeling his idol's ego-less course management, refused the temptation. He chose to lay up short of the green on the par 3 in all 4 rounds, and in all 4 rounds, he made par. This cerebral, conservative approach built a lead. Entering the final round, Casper was 3 strokes clear of his next closest competitor, his idol, Ben Hogan. The apprentice was now leading the master in the final round of the national championship. Hogan faded with a 76, but Casper held firm, securing his first major. He had won by applying the Hogan doctrine more effectively than anyone else, including Hogan himself. Casper didn't just beat his idol, he beat him by being him. That kind of mental toughness is rare. What do you think is the most important part of a golfer's game? Power or a strategic mind? Let me know in the comments. And if you're enjoying these classic golf stories, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's next. If the 1959 US Open was his breakthrough, the 1966 US Open at the Olympic Club in San Francisco was his coronation. It was a tournament that not only defined his career, but stands as one of the most significant pivot points in golf history.
history, forever linking him with his greatest rival, Arnold Palmer. With 9 holes left to play in the final round, the tournament was over. Arnold Palmer, at the absolute zenith of his powers and leading Arnie's army, held a 7-stroke lead over Billy Casper. Palmer had played the front 9 in a blistering 32. His focus, by his own admission, had shifted from merely beating Casper to breaking Ben Hogan's 72-hole US Open scoring record. This aggressive, record-chasing mindset proved to be his Waterloo. Palmer, playing with his signature high-risk style, began to bleed shots. He bogeyed the 10th and 13th holes. Still, with a 5-shot lead, he was in complete control. The turning point came at the par 3 15th. Palmer made his most serious mistake. Instead of playing a safe shot to the middle of the green, he aimed for the pin, caught a greenside bunker, and made bogey. Casper, playing his flawless, if conservative golf, calmly rolled in a long, breaking birdie putt. The 7-shot lead was suddenly, incredibly, down to 3. The momentum shift was palpable. On the par 5 16th, Casper made another birdie. Palmer, now forcing the issue, hit a wild drive and made another bogey. The lead was 1. On the 17th, Palmer bogeyed again. The lead was gone. The two men tied at 278, forcing an 18-hole Monday playoff. Casper had erased a 7-shot deficit in 9 holes, shooting 32 on the back 9 to Palmer's disastrous 39. The 18-hole playoff was a repeat in miniature of the day before. Palmer, with his characteristic charge, came out firing. He got off to a sizzling start and held a 2-stroke lead over Casper as they made the turn to the back 9. What followed wasn't just a collapse, it was a systematic dismantling. Palmer, facing the relentless, error-free pressure of Casper, fell apart again on the exact same stretch of golf course. The turning point came at the 11th, where Casper birdied to Palmer's bogey, erasing the lead. Then, the bogey spree that had started on Sunday's back 9 resumed for Palmer. He bogeyed 14, he bogeyed 15. He then made a catastrophic double bogey on the par 5 16th. Casper played on. He shot a 1-under 69, trouncing Palmer by 4 strokes. Palmer limped in with a 73. The iconic photo from that day isn't of Casper raising the trophy, but of him gently consoling a vanquished, devastated Palmer on the green. This wasn't one collapse, it was 2. A 7-shot lead on Sunday and a 2-shot lead in the playoff, both on the same back 9. It was definitive proof that Casper's victory wasn't a gift, it was a conquest. The most profound and lasting consequence of this dual failure was simple. The King never won another major. Casper's victory at Olympic effectively ended the major-winning career of golf's greatest icon. After Casper's passing, Palmer wrote that Billy was one of the true gentlemen of the game and a great competitor. He then added the crucial admission that so many in the sport already knew. He was a better player than most people gave him credit for being. For decades, the narrative of golf in the 1960s was dominated by the big 3: Arnold Palmer, Jack Nicklaus, and Gary Player. Billy Casper, despite his prolific winning, was consistently left out of the conversation, relegated to the role of the underrated champion. But this narrative wasn't born of objective truth. It was born of commercial savvy. The Big 3 was a marketing creation by the pioneering sports agent Mark McCormick and his firm IMG. McCormick represented Palmer, Nicklaus, and Player, turning them into global household names. Casper, however, wasn't one of his clients. After a parting of the ways with McCormick, Casper was left in the dust of this powerful marketing machine. He was simply a gentleman. He wasn't a story. Casper himself, who titled his autobiography The Big 3 and Me, acknowledged this dynamic. He never paid much attention to the image. All he wanted to do was make enough money to take care of his kids and wife. While the public narrative was being shaped by marketing, Casper was quietly assembling one of the most dominant stretches of golf in history. If the big three were the story, Casper was the fact. A single staggering statistic obliterates the myth that he was a secondary player. During the absolute peak of the big three era, from 1964 to 1970, Billy Casper was the most prolific winner in the sport. In that 7-year span, Casper posted 27 PGA Tour victories. That total was 2 more than Jack Nicklaus, who won 25 times. That total was 6 more than Arnold Palmer and Gary Player combined, who won 21 times. This fact, that the man left out of the Big Three brand was, for a 7-year stretch, the most successful player in the world, is the single most powerful corrective to the historical narrative. Gary Player himself provided a masterful analysis of what made Casper so difficult to beat. Player said he played a lot with Billy, and always thought Billy had a wonderful short game. He praised Casper's tremendous course management, a skill he noted not a lot of people talk about. Player, a member of the power golf generation, then made a crucial admission. He contrasted Casper's style with the modern focus on power, arguing that a great short game is what wins golf tournaments. This analysis from inside the Big Three is the ultimate validation of Casper's Hogan-esque philosophy. In an era increasingly defined by Palmer's swashbuckling power,
Casper's old-school approach of immaculate course management and a world-class short game was the superior winning formula. While Palmer was his defining rival and Player his contemporary, Casper's relationship with Jack Nicklaus was one of deep, mutual, and almost silent respect. This respect was best captured by a now-famous quote. When asked who he feared on the course, Nicklaus, the 18-time major winner, was unequivocal. Billy Casper is the one I feared the most, period. This fear wasn't of Casper's power or his charisma. It was a fear born of pure, cold respect for his invulnerability. Nicklaus, the ultimate strategist, saw Casper as a mirror of his own greatest strength, mental toughness. After Casper's passing, Nicklaus explained why he felt this way. He said it was fair to say that Billy was probably underrated by those who didn't play against him. Those who did compete against him knew how special he was. Then he delivered the crucial explanation. You knew when you played against Billy Casper, Billy would not beat himself. This is the key. In an era of high-risk, go-for-broke golf, Casper was the wall. He was the killer on the golf course precisely because he forced his opponents to come to him. You couldn't wait for him to make a mistake. You had to actively beat him. And in trying to do so, opponents would often force themselves into the very errors Casper calmly avoided. This relentless consistency defined his 1964 to 1970 peak, which was capped by his third and final major victory at the 1970 Masters. In another display of clutch performance, Casper won the tournament in an 18-hole playoff over his fellow San Diego native Gene Littler. This victory earned him his second PGA Player of the Year award, the first being in 1966. For decades, Nicklaus held this private respect for Casper. But in his own autobiography, My Story, he made his final, definitive correction to the Big Three narrative that had dominated his own career. He wrote, simply, that the trio really should have been a quartet. This is the capstone. It's the historical correction from the most important voice in the sport. In Nicklaus's own mind, the debate was settled. It was always the Big Four. When the public narrative is stripped away, what remains is the objective, statistical record. And Billy Casper's record places him in the highest, most exclusive pantheon of the sport. His 51 PGA Tour victories rank 7th on the all-time list. The only 6 men in history to have won more tournaments are Sam Snead, Tiger Woods, Jack Nicklaus, Ben Hogan, Arnold Palmer, and Byron Nelson. This statistical dominance is made all the more remarkable by a life-altering event that provided the why for his calm demeanor and quiet life. In early 1966, at the age of 34 and at the height of his playing career, Billy Casper joined the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This wasn't a casual conversion. It became the central, organizing principle of his life. His new faith provided an immediate, radical reprioritization of his world. The evidence is stark. In June 1966, just months after his conversion, he staged his legendary comeback to win the US Open. His flawless, if conservative, calm in the face of Palmer's charge can be seen as the newfound peace of a man who had just discovered a purpose far greater than a golf tournament. The most radical proof of this new priority came just weeks later. After winning the US Open Open, Casper did not go to Scotland to play in the British Open, the season's next major championship. He had a prior commitment. He had promised to host the LDS All-Church tournament. For Casper, a promise to his new faith community outweighed the pursuit of a claret jug. This decision explains everything. His underrated status wasn't in the end a failure of marketing or a slight by the press. It was an active choice. He wasn't interested in the image or the race for fame. He willingly traded the global spotlight of the Big Three for a life centered on his faith and his family. He was married to his wife, Shirley, for 62 years. Together, they raised 11 children, 6 of whom were adopted. This provides the final context for Jack Nicklaus's tribute. When Nicklaus said golf was never the most important thing in Billy's life, family was, he wasn't just offering a kind word. He was validating Casper's life choice. He was acknowledging that Casper, the man he feared the most, had chosen a different path and had won a far greater prize.